My name is Ian Bush, and I am covering AVID 313, the Cessna 150 purchase that we are partaking in. So I am an air traffic control student, so I don't really have any flight training. So I just put down as the in the pilot questionnaire that I had the basic amount of training, around 40 to 60 hours in Piper Archer at Grand Forks. Um, to keep it pretty basic, as I don't really know much more than that. Um, but we can go into what it would be like to look at this from the insurance side. So, the loss of direction accident happening if we bought a Cessna 150, and we were flying in the mountains, the likelihood is extremely remote. I said this because the pilot is fairly low in experience, but the likelihood that a pilot is going to crash um, more than once every 3 years is pretty low. Um, there's 700,000 private pilots in the United States and 1,000 crashes per year. So the chance of that is around 0.1%. And the likelihood that a singular pilot crashes more than once is extremely low. So a pilot may have a certificate for 40 or 50 years, and the likelihood that they crash, 1 to 3 years versus like more than 30 versus even something like once every year. I mean, pilots aren't crashing once every year. So I said this was extremely remote because um, it just doesn't happen quite as often, as something we'd have to pay out, such as maintenance or something along those lines. He is flying a smaller aircraft, like a 150, um, and he is flying out of the mountains, which he isn't used to because he's been training out of Grand Forks. So this does change the way we look at things a little bit. The premiums may need to be a little bit higher because of that. The severity, a loss of control is hazardous. If we look at our um, graph here, because out of the 150 deaths that happen every year, 48% occur from a loss of control accident. These are one of the most dangerous, and they happen mostly on takeoff and landing, obviously. So, especially in small aircraft, the aircraft can flip over, the engine might explode. There's just so many things that can go wrong with that it's just one of the most dangerous. Especially older aircraft, a 1962 Cessna 150 doesn't have some of these new features that, they're putting parachutes in these new planes. So, if he was flying something like that, the way that an insurance company would look at it from a loss of life perspective would be completely different. Risk matrix. So it is high severity, and I put it also as low frequency. So transferring the risk makes sense for the pilot. Um, it's not going to happen very often, but if it does, it could be catastrophic. So it's best to just transfer the risk. And I think global aerospace should accept the risk. Just make sure the premiums are set properly, as these things can be expensive, even though they don't happen very often. So we would just have to take into account, his hours, his training, the type of plane he's flying, and such. Um, and like I said before, the risk doesn't happen as often as things like maintenance, so it's a reasonable thing to insure and very common. Risk reduction. The pilot should mitigate the flights by only flying in weather they feel comfortable in. Obviously, he's going to have to get used to flying the mountains because um, the altimeter is going to be different because he's at a different altitude. Um, he could also continue training to get more rating. He could go in for his um, multi-engine rating and other stuff just to, get more experience, different types of rating. And lastly, they could make sure that while they're flying, they follow proper protocols and are just extra cognizant about safety, making sure they do their checklists on takeoff, landing. Just make sure they don't miss anything, especially when it happens with private pilots that are just flying for recreational purposes. Sometimes they can get in that flow and forget things. Fraud. So fraud can be found in pretty much any part of business, and insurance is no different. The pilot could have done a multitude of things on his questionnaire, which would have been identified as fraud. He could have lied and said that he did more training in the mountains, that he was based out of maybe Denver, Colorado. So, as an insurance company, I would be more at ease about him, immediately switching his base of operations there because he's been used to flying Grand Forks, and now he's switching to Denver. Whereas if he was based in Denver, you know, it's not quite the same. He also could have lied about how many hours he's completed. He's only done about 40 to 50, pretty low. So he could have said that he had the 100, 150, which means he's less likely to crash. Um, or even he could have lied and said he had 1,000. And these pilots are normally more competent, so less likely to crash. He also could have lied about the ratings he had. He could have said that he's allowed to fly in without IFR conditions, um, which is pretty helpful, as well as like a multi-engine rating, a water landing rating, which just makes it less likely for something catastrophic to happen, just because he has more time in the aircraft. Thank you.